The patrol ship Driftwing moved quietly through the outer rim of alien-controlled space. Its crew had expected nothing more than routine scans and long hours of silence. The region was known for calm passages and the occasional stray trader ship. No one thought they would find anything unusual here. Yet the scanners began to hum with an alert that broke the monotony of the day. Lieutenant Karen was the first to notice the strange reading. She tapped her console again and again, thinking it was a fault in the system. The signal was too large, too strong, and far too steady to be a drifting asteroid or a lost cargo vessel. The signature was clear. It was a warship. The captain of the Driftwing, Commander Salvek, stepped closer and frowned at the display. His eyes were sharp, trained by years of service, and even he could not hide the surprise in his voice. A warship of this size should not be here. No known empire had a record of such a vessel in this sector. He ordered the crew to bring the image onto the main screen. What they saw left the bridge in silence. The ship was colossal, larger than any patrol cruiser they had seen. Its hull was dark, marked with lines that suggested both age and design unknown to them. At first glance it looked like a relic, perhaps a forgotten craft from a war long past. But then the details became clear. The surface gleamed with recent work. Panels shone as if newly forged. Weapon arrays lined its sides, not idle but active, humming with energy. Lieutenant Karen whispered the thought that none of them wanted to speak aloud. It was human. The word carried weight across the room. Humans were not known for such vessels. Their fleets were small compared to the older empires. They were seen as young, learning the ways of space. A human ship of this size and strength was something no one expected. Commander Salvek asked for a verification. The scans confirmed the truth. The design matched human patterns of engineering. The energy signatures aligned with human reactors. There was no mistake. This was a human warship, and it was not a derelict. It was alive and fully armed. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had studied human ships before, mostly small destroyers and modest cruisers. None came close to this. The Driftwing was no match for such power, and every officer on board knew it. Salvek ordered the ship to maintain distance. He wanted to observe without drawing attention. He sent coded reports back to the nearest fleet command. The information would travel fast across the stars. Even now, he could imagine the stir it would cause. As the Driftwing circled at the edge of scanning range, the human ship remained still. It floated like a giant in slumber, yet every reading suggested it was watching, waiting. Its weapons were not hidden. They were displayed like a warning to anyone who dared approach. On the bridge, tension grew with each passing minute. The crew could feel the weight of history unfolding. No one had expected humanity to rise so quickly. No one had thought they could build something that rivaled the great powers. Yet here it was, a ship that changed every assumption. Commander Salvek spoke softly, almost to himself. If humanity had built one, how many more could there be? The silence that followed was heavy. The thought was unsettling. If this ship was the first of many, the balance of the galaxy would shift. As the crew watched, the human warship shifted slightly, engines glowing with quiet light. It was not drifting. It was moving with intent. The bridge lights of the Driftwing flickered as new readings poured in. Energy levels rose across the unknown vessel. Shields, weapons, propulsion, all active at once. Lieutenant Karen felt her hands tighten on the console. The ship was not hiding. It was showing itself on purpose. It wanted to be seen. Commander Salvek gave one final order for the moment. Hold position, stay hidden as best we can, and watch. The Driftwing was now the witness to something far greater than a simple patrol. They were staring at a revelation. Far away from home, in a region no one thought important, a human warship had appeared. It was no rumor, no shadow on a scan. It was real, it was armed, and it carried the silent promise that humanity was no longer the weak newcomer of the stars. And the galaxy would never look the same again. The message from the Driftwing did not take long to reach the command centers of nearby empires. By the time the patrol ship had finished its first round of reports, the news was already racing across communication relays. Everywhere the signal touched, whispers began to rise. A human warship had been found, not small, not fragile, but colossal and armed with the strength of a fleet. On the trade stations along the border routes, merchants exchanged the story in hushed tones. Some thought it was false, a rumor spread by nervous patrol crews. Others swore that the readings were too precise to be dismissed. Every traveler carried the story further, and with each retelling, the sense of unease grew stronger. In the council chambers of the Varn Dominion, the governors sat in silence as the data played across their screens. One governor broke the silence with a simple truth. If the humans had created such a ship in secret, then the galaxy had underestimated them. The thought unsettled the entire chamber. The Varn had always seen humans as distant settlers, loud in voice but small in reach. Now that view seemed fragile. On the other side of the stars, the Cathari Confederacy received the same news. Their admirals studied the images again and again, searching for flaws, hoping it was a mistake. But every detail spoke with clarity. The hull design, the energy output, the weapon arrays, all confirmed human engineering. One admiral shook his head slowly. If the humans had built one, they could build many more. The others around him did not disagree. Even among the neutral powers, the reaction was no calmer. On the great station of Zahiran, where dozens of species traded and debated, the story spread like a storm. Traders from every corner leaned over tables to argue. Some believed the ship was meant only as a guardian, a tool to protect human colonies. Others feared it was the first sign of expansion, a warning that humanity would no longer remain confined to its modest space. The smaller empires were perhaps the most afraid. Many of them had used humans as trading partners or minor allies, never considering them dangerous. If humans had hidden their progress so well, then what else might they be hiding? If one ship could change the balance of power, what would a fleet do? Back on the Driftwing, the crew continued to watch. They could feel the weight of what their discovery had set in motion. Lieutenant Karen thought about how fast the news would spread and how quickly fear would take root. She imagined alien leaders sitting in their high towers, wondering if they had been wrong about humanity all along. Commander Salvek knew the truth. Fear was a powerful force. It could unite, or it could destroy. The empires might join together to confront humanity before more ships appeared. Or they might break into chaos, each one trying to secure safety before the others. Either way, the galaxy would not remain the same. In hidden chambers far from the border, the highest councils of major powers gathered. They spoke in guarded voices about the human warship. Some argued that it was an isolated project, a single creation that humans could not repeat. Others warned that it was foolish to assume such a thing. Humanity had always shown resilience. If they could build one, they would not stop at one. While the leaders debated, the people of the galaxy listened to fragments of the story. In the great marketplaces, ordinary citizens asked questions their rulers could not answer. What did humans want? Why had they built such a warship? And most of all, what would happen if it began to move beyond its current position? In every corner of space, from the wealthiest station to the smallest outpost, one truth settled into the hearts of many. Humanity was no longer just another young species learning the ways of the stars. They were something else now, something capable of reshaping the balance. On the driftwing, Commander Salvek looked at the silent figure of the warship on his screen. He wondered how long it would remain still. He wondered what message the humans intended to send. But more than that, he wondered if the galaxy was ready for the answer. For the first time in generations, the older empires felt the cold grip of uncertainty. Fear had crossed the stars, and its source was unmistakable. Humanity had built a warship, and nothing would ever be the same again. The human warship drifted in silence, yet every reading from the driftwing confirmed it was alive and awake. Its engines glowed faintly, its weapons hummed with steady power, and its shields shimmered like a quiet storm waiting to be unleashed. To the small patrol ship, it felt less like a vessel and more like a living giant resting in the void. It did not take long before the first delegation arrived. The Cathari Confederacy, proud and cautious, sent a small fleet of 3 cruisers to make contact. Their orders were clear. Do not attack unless provoked, but do not let the human ship move freely. The galaxy wanted answers, and the Cathari intended to be the first to receive them. From the bridge of the driftwing, Commander Salvek and his crew watched the approach. The Cathari ships moved in formation, their sleek frames gliding through the stars like hunters. Salvek knew what they were attempting. They wanted to show strength, to remind the humans that they were not alone in this region of space. Yet as the 3 cruisers approached, their formation looked small compared to the colossal figure of the human vessel. The alien ships hailed the warship, broadcasting in every common frequency. At first, there was only silence. The Cathari repeated their call, firmer this time, demanding identification and intent. The silence stretched long enough that many on the driftwing wondered if the ship was unmanned, a remote machine left to test reactions. Then the reply came. The voice was calm, steady, and unmistakably human. This vessel is under the authority of the Terran Command. You are entering restricted space. State your reason for approach. The words rippled across the channels. The Cathari fleet had expected defiance, perhaps threats, but the human captain spoke with measured authority, as if their ship had every right to be here. For a moment, the alien cruisers hesitated. They had not expected to be questioned. Admiral Thuric of the Cathari answered. He declared that this region was not recognized as human territory and that the sudden appearance of such a ship was a matter of great concern. He demanded to know why the humans had built a warship of such size and why it now sat so close to their borders. The human captain gave no long explanation. Instead, the reply was simple. Humanity will not justify its defense to others. This ship exists because it must. On the driftwing, Lieutenant Karen stared at the console in shock. The tone of the human commander was not aggressive, but it carried strength. It was not the voice of a weak power begging for recognition. It was the voice of an equal standing tall among giants. The Cathari fleet adjusted their position, forming a loose blockade around the warship. Their sensors locked on, their weapons shifted into ready stance. Admiral Thuric sent one last demand. Power down your weapons and prepare for boarding, or we will act. For a moment, it seemed as if battle might erupt. Energy levels surged across both sides. The Cathari cruisers flared with shield activations. The human warship answered by raising its own defenses. Lights raced across its hull, and weapon arrays glowed with a dangerous shine. Yet the human captain did not open fire. Instead, he spoke again. "If you fire, you will regret the choice. Stand down and leave this area." The words were not shouted. They were spoken like a simple truth. Even across the distance of space, the weight of those words pressed heavily upon the Cathari fleet. On the driftwing, Commander Salvek realized something deeper. The humans were not seeking a fight. They were warning the galaxy. This was not a test of weapons. It was a test of will. The standoff lasted long minutes. The Cathari ships held their line, but no shots were fired. Finally, Admiral Thurek gave the order to retreat to observation distance. His cruisers pulled back, unwilling to risk a direct clash against a ship that radiated such quiet menace. The first encounter had ended without battle, but the message was clear. Humanity had spoken with confidence, and the galaxy had listened. The warship was no rumor, no shadow. It was real, it was ready, and it was commanded by those who would not bow. As the driftwing logged the final report, Commander Salvek knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had come to meet the human warship, and the humans had shown they were no longer silent in the stars. The balance had shifted, and everyone knew it. The retreat of the Cathari cruisers did not ease the tension across the galaxy. Instead, it fueled even greater debate. If 3 warships had backed down from a single human vessel, then humanity had proven something many leaders were not ready to accept. They had become a power that could not be ignored. In the weeks that followed, the great councils of the empires argued without pause. Some called for a united front to pressure the humans into revealing their plans. Others argued that direct confrontation would only invite disaster. A third group urged caution, warning that humans had always shown determination when challenged. Yet while leaders argued in their high towers, fleets moved quietly. More patrols gathered near the border where the mysterious warship waited. Spies tried to uncover more information about human shipyards, though none returned with clear answers. Rumors spread of hidden facilities, of secret colonies working in silence to build more giants. No one knew the truth, and that uncertainty gnawed at every empire. On the driftwing, Commander Salvek continued his watch. The human vessel remained still, drifting yet alert, as if daring others to test it. Salvek's crew grew restless. They had witnessed the first encounter, and they knew the galaxy was preparing for another. Every day the air on the bridge grew thicker, heavy with the expectation of conflict. The test came sooner than expected. A coalition fleet arrived at the edge of the system, made up of ships from 3 different powers. They did not hide their presence. Instead, they advanced in full formation, banners of their empires glowing across their hulls. It was a display of unity and strength, meant to remind the humans that they were still outnumbered. The driftwing pulled back to a safe distance, observing from the shadows. Lieutenant Karen whispered what the crew already feared. "They have come to force a show of power." Commander Salvek nodded grimly. That was the truth. The coalition hailed the human ship with a message that echoed across all channels. They demanded that the warship stand down, deactivate its weapons, and submit to inspection. Their words were sharp and formal, but beneath them lay a clear warning. Comply, or face destruction. For a long moment, the human warship gave no answer. Then its engines ignited, casting blue light across the void. The massive vessel shifted into motion with the grace of a predator stretching its limbs. Shields flared, weapons came alive, and the silence of space seemed to tremble. The human captain's voice broke across the channels. "This ship will not submit. If you seek to test us, then you will see the result. The coalition responded by tightening their formation. Energy surged as their ships locked weapons on target. Yet before a single shot was fired, the humans acted. In an instant, the warship unleashed a storm of precision fire. Beams lanced out, striking the engines of one cruiser, the weapon banks of another, and the shields of a third. Each strike was surgical, designed to cripple but not destroy. The vast ship moved like a master of the battlefield, proving its strength without sinking a single vessel. On the driftwing, the crew stared in disbelief. They had expected brute force, yet what they saw was control. The humans could have destroyed the fleet, yet they held back. This was not an act of conquest. It was a lesson. The coalition ships staggered, their formation broken, their weapons dimmed. In shock, they retreated, dragging their damaged vessels away from the human warship. No one spoke across the channels. No one dared. When the silence returned, the human captain spoke again, calm and steady. "Leave now. Tell your leaders what you have seen. Humanity will not bow, and we will not be hunted." The words carried far beyond the battlefield. Relays caught the message and spread it across the stars. Within hours, entire empires were replaying the human captain's voice. Every leader, every officer, every citizen heard the declaration. The galaxy now knew the truth. Humanity had the strength to resist, the control to restrain, and the resolve to hold their ground against overwhelming numbers. The test had been forced upon them, and they had passed it without question. On the driftwing, Commander Salvek felt a chill run through him. He understood what many others would soon realize. The humans had not revealed all their power. They had only shown enough to send a warning. The test of resolve was over. The galaxy had dared to challenge humanity, and humanity had answered with both strength and restraint. Now the question was no longer if they could stand, but what they would choose to do next. The demonstration of human power shook the galaxy like a storm. The coalition fleet had returned battered, not destroyed, yet humiliated by the precision of the human warship. Entire councils replayed the recordings of the encounter, watching as one colossal vessel stood against many and forced them to retreat. The lesson was clear. Humanity was no longer a silent voice at the edge of the stars. Still, fear and pride are not easily quieted. Some leaders called for peace, urging restraint, and warning that humanity had already shown enough strength to defend itself. Others saw weakness in hesitation and pushed for a second confrontation. They argued that if humanity was not contained now, then one day their fleets would rival the oldest empires. The galaxy divided into two voices, one of caution and one of challenge. The human warship remained where it had been discovered, its presence like a dark mountain in space. From the driftwing, Commander Salvek continued his silent watch. He knew another confrontation was coming. The galaxy would not leave such a vessel untested for long. He only wondered who would act first. The answer arrived soon. A larger fleet gathered, this time made up of ships from 5 different powers. They did not intend to cripple the human vessel and retreat. Their orders were clear. They would blockade it, surround it, and force it into submission. They believed numbers and unity would break the will of a single crew. The driftwing moved to a distant observation point. Its crew watched as the blockade formed, dozens of ships closing in from all directions. Their hulls glowed with readiness, weapons locked, shields raised. The human warship was outnumbered by nearly 20 to 1. It was a scene meant to break morale before the first shot was fired. The aliens hailed the warship, their combined voice firm and demanding. They ordered the humans to power down their ship and surrender. They warned that refusal would lead to destruction. For a long moment, the human ship remained still, engines dark, weapons silent. On the driftwing, Lieutenant Karen felt her chest tighten. She wondered if the humans would finally bow under such overwhelming force. Then the warship answered, not with surrender but with movement. Its engines lit up, slow at first, then steady, as the massive ship turned to face the blockade. Its weapons came alive, dozens of turrets locking into firing positions. The human captain's voice rang across the channels, calm yet unyielding. We will not surrender. If you wish to test us, then no, we will fight. The blockade tightened, ships edging closer, daring the humans to act. The void filled with tension, every vessel ready to unleash fire. The humans struck first. In a sudden burst, the warship released a spread of precision fire. Energy beams cut across the blockade, striking engines, tearing through shields, and disabling weapons. The attacks were swift and focused, designed not to kill but to cripple. 5 ships fell powerless in the opening minutes, drifting in silence. The blockade fired back. Dozens of blasts lit the void, slamming into the human shields. The warship rocked under the assault but held firm. Its defenses glowed bright, absorbing strike after strike. Then it answered with another wave of fire, crippling 3 more ships with brutal efficiency. On the driftwing, Salvek and his crew watched in awe. The humans were outnumbered, yet they fought with control and purpose. They did not destroy their foes completely. They struck only to disarm and disable, showing power while holding back destruction. It was not just a battle. It was a message. The clash lasted hours. The blockade broke apart, its formation shattered by the relentless strikes. One by one, ships fell back, unable to continue. Finally, the remaining vessels retreated, dragging their damaged allies with them. The human warship, scarred but unbroken, remained in place, its weapons still glowing, its engines steady. When silence returned, the human captain spoke one final time. We do not seek war, but we will not kneel. Leave us in peace, or face the same again. The words spread across the stars within hours. The clash of wills had ended, and humanity had proven that even against overwhelming numbers, they would not surrender. Their resolve was unshaken, their power undeniable, and their restraint clear for all to see. On the driftwing, Commander Salvek leaned back in his chair. He knew he had witnessed history. The galaxy had come together to break the humans, and the humans had stood unbroken. Fear would now grow sharper, but so would respect. The clash of wills was over, yet its echo would carry across the stars for generations. The battle was over, but the ripples it left behind spread far and wide. The blockade had failed, and the galaxy now whispered of human strength with both fear and respect. For the first time in centuries, the older empires felt uncertain about their dominance. The humans had shown they could fight against overwhelming odds and still hold back enough power to avoid needless destruction. On the driftwing, Commander Salvek and his crew continued their watch. The human warship floated steady, scarred from the clash yet unbroken. To Salvek, the restraint the humans had shown was more telling than the firepower itself. They could have destroyed the fleet, but they had chosen to cripple instead. It was not the act of conquerors. It was the act of a people sending a message. That message soon became clear. A week after the clash, the human warship finally broke its silence. For the first time since its discovery, it transmitted a wide broadcast across multiple networks. The voice of the human captain filled the channels, steady and deliberate. We did not come to your borders to threaten. We came because we will no longer live under the shadow of others. This ship was built not for conquest but for protection. Humanity will defend itself, and none shall harm us again. The words carried across the stars, recorded and replayed in every council chamber, every market station, and every military command post. The captain's tone was calm, but the weight of the message was undeniable. The ship was proof that humanity had grown weary of being treated as lesser. On trade stations, ordinary people debated endlessly. Some believed the humans truly wanted peace, that their ship was a shield and not a sword. Others feared the words were only a mask, hiding ambitions of expansion. Yet no matter which side they chose, none could deny that the humans had earned respect. In the grand chambers of the Varn Dominion, the governors studied the recording with heavy faces. One governor remarked that if humanity had chosen to destroy the blockade, the galaxy would now be at war. Instead, they had chosen restraint. That choice spoke louder than any show of firepower. Another governor warned that such restraint might not last forever if the empires continued to test them. Far across the stars, the Cathari Confederacy also studied the broadcast. Admiral Tharuk, who had faced the humans in the first encounter, sat in silence as he listened to the words again. He knew they were true. He had seen the calm control of the human captain with his own eyes. They were not reckless. They were determined. On the driftwing, Lieutenant Karen whispered her thoughts aloud. They only want to be safe. She said it softly, yet her words echoed what many across the galaxy were beginning to realize. Humanity was not asking for domination. They were asking for space to live, to grow, and to defend what was theirs. The human warship moved slightly, its engines glowing faintly as if to remind the watching fleets that it was still alert. It did not advance into foreign space. It did not launch attacks. It simply held its ground, as if daring anyone to test its resolve again. Commander Salvek felt a quiet respect settle in him. The humans had not only built a ship. They had built a statement. Their message was clear. We will not be weak, and we will not be prey. The revelation of purpose spread quickly. Smaller empires, long weary of the larger powers, began to look at humanity in a new light. Some even whispered of alliances, thinking that humans might offer protection where others offered only control. The balance of trust was shifting. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, arguments grew sharper. Some leaders pushed for more pressure on humanity, believing fear must be maintained. Others urged caution, saying the humans had already shown that pressure would only lead to stronger resistance. No one agreed, but all understood that the galaxy could not return to how it had been before. The driftwing remained in quiet orbit, recording every moment. Its crew had become witnesses to a turning point in history. They had seen fear grow, they had seen strength revealed, and now they saw purpose declared for all to hear. The human warship no longer seemed like an enigma. It was a beacon, blazing with the truth that humanity would chart its own path. They would not seek war, but neither would they allow themselves to be treated as weak. Commander Salvek watched the giant vessel on his screen and spoke softly to his crew. The galaxy has awakened to a new power. Humanity has shown us who they are. And the stars themselves seemed to listen. The words of the human captain continued to echo across the galaxy. They were replayed on trade stations, in council halls, and even in the private chambers of rulers who rarely admitted fear. The human warship had become more than a ship. It had become a symbol, one that carried weight far beyond its size. The driftwing kept its watch, recording every transmission and every movement. Commander Salvek knew his reports would be studied for years to come, perhaps even centuries. He felt both heavy responsibility and quiet wonder. He had seen the moment when humanity stepped out from the shadows and into the center of galactic history. In the Dominion, the governors debated endlessly. Some wanted to push harder, believing humanity could still be bent to their will. Others warned that such attempts would only invite disaster. A few even suggested new treaties, thinking that cooperation with humans might bring stability rather than chaos. The chamber, once so certain of its authority, now trembled with doubt. The Confederacy faced the same division. Admiral Thurick spoke with calm certainty in the council. He told them that humanity would not bend, that they had proven their resolve. He reminded them that in the first encounter, the humans had shown power yet held back. That restraint was not weakness. It was strength. His words carried weight, for he had seen the truth with his own eyes. The smaller empires began to shift first. Many of them had lived under the shadow of the great powers for generations. They had been forced to give tribute, to obey rules they did not choose. Now they saw in humanity something different. A people who stood tall and said no more. Quiet whispers of alliance grew louder. Some even sent secret envoys toward human space, hoping to begin talks before the larger empires acted. On the trade stations, the story was no longer told as fear alone. Merchants spoke of opportunity. If humanity was rising, then trade with them might bring new markets and new paths of wealth. Ordinary people, far removed from the chambers of power, began to view humans with respect. They were no longer the young species struggling to survive. They were a force that could not be dismissed. The human warship itself remained steady, holding position like a guardian. It did not advance into alien space, nor did it retreat. Its very presence declared a silent promise. Humanity had no need to prove themselves further. They had already shown enough. On the Driftwing, Lieutenant Karen asked the question that many across the galaxy were asking. What will they do next? Commander Salvek had no answer. He only knew that the galaxy would wait and watch, every empire preparing for the path humanity would choose. Weeks passed, and no new battles came. Instead, messages of diplomacy began to move quietly. Some empires tested the waters, sending cautious words instead of fleets. Others remained stubborn, warning that humanity must not be allowed to grow unchecked. Yet none dared to attack again. The memory of the clash of wills was still too fresh, the scars still too visible. In time, the galaxy began to adjust. Borders were redrawn not by treaties, but by unspoken respect. No fleet entered human space without caution. No power made demands without thinking twice. Humanity had not taken territory by conquest. They had earned it through resolve. Commander Salvek stood on the bridge of the Driftwing and felt the change. The stars seemed quieter, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. He knew this was only the beginning. The humans had built one warship, and that alone had changed everything. What would happen if more followed? The thought carried both fear and hope. As the Driftwing prepared to leave its post, Salvek gave one final order to his crew. Record everything, every signal, every whisper. History is being written, and we are its witnesses. Far away, the human warship glowed in the dark, a giant standing watch over the border. To some it was a threat, to others a promise. But to all, it was proof that the balance of power had shifted. Humanity was no longer a quiet voice among the stars. They were now a force that demanded respect. The galaxy would never return to the way it had been. A new balance of power had been forged, and at its heart stood humanity, unbroken and unafraid.